All right.
So today we're just going to go over some of the basics quickly before we get to work. So we'll get right down to it. We're going to be talking about lockout tagout. So lockout tagout basically is a means of preventing incidents of machines that are not currently in use. So, for example, if you are a maintenance worker, lockout tagout is there to prevent machine or any sort of power to flow to the machine while you are working on it. This can lead to a lot of different injuries, and it can be just generally dangerous. So if you can completely cut it out, it's incredibly valuable. So some of the specific types of forces that we're looking to avoid due to lockout tagout are electrical forces like electrocution. If you're doing maintenance and a machine turns up and you're in a compromised position, you could get electrocuted. It's very dangerous. Mechanical and hydraulics. This is involving physical force. So if you were working on a machine and it booted up and it crushed your hand or dragged your hand further in to said machine, it could get dangerous. There could be a lot of damage done pretty quickly. Pneumatic has to do with stored up gases or air pressure. So propane, stuff like that has, whether it can be sparkable and it can combust, that can also be dangerous if not managed properly. Chemical, if you're in a more of a lab environment or you're working with these chemicals every day, not having the correct equipment can put you in a compromising position where you could get exposed to chemicals, and who knows what that can cause long term. And also the thermals of it, excessive heat can make a big difference as well. So if you're exposed to high temperatures over a short amount of time or over a long amount of time, it can be dangerous. And this is all in the aim of preventing anything like that happening.
So I'm going to be going over the training that we'll be going through for the lockout tagout. So what this training is going to look like is just this OSHA standard requirements are that before the machine or equipment is turned off, the authorized personnel must be knowledgeable of the following: recognition, the applicable hazards, energy sources. Anyone that is not authorized or trained to do this may not be allowed to apply the lockout tagout onto the machinery. So if you see anybody doing something they're not supposed to, just make sure they stay away. Some equipment that's going to be used during the lockout tagouts is two major components of the lockout tagout are that absolutely needed are a label informing workers that this machine is often out of service, and secondly, you need a lock to make sure no one can turn on or use the equipment to prevent any injuries or hazards that may come. The 8 proper steps that we are going to look for lockout tagout is the first step is detailed procedures for equipment. The second step is notify affected employees. The third step would be shut down equipment properly using the procedure. Would the procedure just be putting the lockout onto the equipment? Step 4 would be locate and disconnect all primary energy sources. So your power box, wherever that's located throughout the facility. The 5th step would be address all secondary sources, make sure backup generators and nothing are on. Step 6 would be to verify the lockout, make sure the lock is firmly tightened and locked so it doesn't come off and no one can tamper with it. Step 7 would to keep it in force during shift changes. So once your shift's over, make sure you inform the person coming in after you that this machine is locked out and you can't use it. And then the final step would bring the equipment back online once all the changes are done and all the fixes are made.
The next thing is the wrong way of doing a lockout and common mistakes that happen. Not using a lock. This job, an example would be just this job will only take a few minutes. I don't need to use a lock. I'll just shut down the equipment controls. And no, you never do that in any circumstance. Is this permissible at all? Not using proper procedure for specific equipment. By not telling the employees that you are performing a lockout, leaving the key in the lock. And an example would be a worker performing a lockout is afraid she's going to lose the key, so she leaves it in the lock. Big mistake. Now, Now anyone could come along and remove the lock, not realizing it's protecting someone's life. Not locking and checking all primary and secondary energy sources. An example would be an employee locked out the control circuit and thought it was good enough. Wrong. The main disconnect or switch must be locked out too. Even one drop of water, a few particles of dust can cause the machine to operate with anyone pressing any start buttons. Not verifying the lockout, tagging your lock. Everything is correctly locked out and a machine repair person is ready to go work. He only got a few hours to finish the job, so he jumps right in. Stop. Do not do that. Before he does any repairs, he must take a few moments to test that the controls are definitely operative.
So some commonly asked questions from our company about locking out and tagging out is how long can you walk away from the machine without locking and tagging out? And what I have to tell you about that is no, you're never supposed to walk away from a machine while on shift or off shift that has not been locked and tagged out. You have to make sure to see if you missed the lockout, and you have to attend to it immediately to ensure the safety of all other employees working on the floor for the current or next shift. The next employees use other employees' locks. Yes, but the problem with that is that OSHA requires each employee to service their own lock to ensure that no other employees are responsible for another employee's safety while on shift. If a company does not hold themselves to that high standard, they will allow shift managers to be the only one in charge of locking out and tagging out, and that is not a good idea because that can lead to mishaps and forgetting locks and putting the other employees' safety at risk while on shift. Also, a question that has been asked by you guys is, does the wrong use of tags happen? And the wrong use of tags can happen when an employee uses the wrong labeled tag, such as a danger, do not operate tag, just to go on break because that's the only thing they have on them at the point. And that can slow down the production of the workplace when they don't have the right tag on hand. And if they tag it for something that is just out of service at the point while they're changing a shift, and it's actually a dangerous machine that should not be operated at that point, it could lead to somebody getting hurt.